Good morning, afternoon, or evening, my fellow viewers. I'm the better-looking host catering for you today. What's that I hear? Oh yeah! Football versus football! Let's go! Yeah, football versus American football. Our first video of this new series, Football versus Insert Chosen Sport. Hope you enjoy, and let's get right into it. Let's get into investigating the origins of American football and contrast those with the beginnings of association football to discover the stories leading to the present day games and finally find out why those across the pond insist on calling their game football and our game soccer, and it may not please people who don't like the word soccer. The truth of the matter is that American football is basically the child of association football and rugby football, as you would expect. In the middle of the 19th century, football was a term about as broad as Kante's positioning. Everyone had their own idea of how to play, and it was not like the sport we know today. Handling the ball was a big part of the game, but there was mass variations of rules concerning tackling, passing, etc. It is to be remembered that this was a time where the main method of communicating was shouting really, really loud across towns. So of course the rules were flexible depending on where you were. However, some cohesion in ruling began to emerge in 1869 when New Jersey played the first college football match at around the same time as the FA was drawing up its own rules for association football. Gradually, different variations of football started to drift apart from each other, and American football was no different. Throughout the 1870s, the sport played with various rule setups, but eventually started to move towards a sport more like rugby than association football. In 1880, a man called Walter Camp, known as the father of American football, made a lot of changes to the rules to move it closer to the modern day sport, including adding a quarterback and making the game more skill-based and safer. In 1895, the first professional match was played, and then in 1922, the American Professional Football Association changed its name to the National Football League, or NFL, and just like that, American football had been created from as a variation on association football. This explains why the Americans call it football then, despite the fact that the modern game is neither foot nor ball. Basically, in the mid-1800s, everybody was playing slightly different rules, but they called it football. But then people started deciding official rules for sports, and so football was split into different types, including the American football. Eventually, more and more rule changes were implemented until the sport was completely different to association football, but nobody could be bothered to change the name, and so it was that football became the name of a sport with barely any foot and a swished version of a ball. As for the origins of the word soccer, I'll save that to the end. Now, let's compare the rules of American football to that of association football. Jeez, it's getting annoying having to say association football every time. Anyway, let's quickly explain American football for anybody who doesn't know them. Ha, imagine not knowing the rules of American football. Not like I didn't know them until this afternoon. The objective is to score points by getting the ball in the touchdown area, or by getting the ball through the two posts at either end of the field. Each team has an offence and a defence that come onto the pitch depending on whether they are attacking or defending, and the offence is given 4 chances or downs to move 10 yards up the field closer to the end zone, which sounds like a fantasy land, but it really just is the place to score touchdowns in. Like rugby, you can tackle by essentially doing a John Cena on your opponent, and the attack can get past the defence by running through or past them, passing the ball between them, or by jumping over them if they are really talented. This is a vast simplification guaranteed to get every American football fan angry, but essentially American football is a game of strategy and gradual movement, a bit like rugby. The main difference between it and association football being that most American football matches see action concentrated in one area most of the time, whereas association football is all about quick movement and spreading play. Finally, let's address the culture built up around American football via association football. Both sides have a tendency to believe their sport is better, which is a silly debate really, because we all know that association football is better. Only joking, I'm not, by the way. Anyway, association football has become the biggest sport on the planet, whilst American football has become a big part of being American for many. The biggest American football event of the year, the Super Bowl, is huge and has turned to become the 3rd most watched sporting event on television, and there is no doubt that the size of the event, even people who hate football know when it's happening. American and association football are like siblings really. They grew up from the same origins and gradually went their separate ways to become successful in their own separate ways. And the bit that no association football fan wants to hear, soccer was a British word. Let me explain. Remember association football? Well, in the 1860s, the British had a tendency for putting ER onto words, and so they took the sock from association and added the and ta-da, sock, And that's it for the video. Today we tackled one of the biggest sports in the world for our first video of the series, and I didn't say handegg once. Oh, sorry, I just said it there. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and you can suggest in the comments what sport we should cover next in our series. Hopefully, though, you enjoyed the video as well. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.